It's a joy to be together, and I love healing foods, and I love teaching nutrition and wellness and sharing it with my dear friend and colleague Lizette Marks. And she's wonderful, and she's a current instructor for the National Holistic Institute Bowman College program. So being with her is great. What I love about this is it's healing foods and spices. And we'll have more on spices in our next program with Em and Nita. And really, we're cooking with the flavors of health. And you go, that's an interesting concept, flavors of health. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And there I am, meet Dr. Ed, Dr. B, the founder of Bowman College, 1989, the founder of Bauman Wellness. And Bowman Wellness actually goes back 50 years. I started on the path of wellness and really radical wellness in 1969. So gosh, if I do the math, that's 52 years. And I say radical because it's really about the root. It's about the well. It's about the source. And it's just amazing to have been able to be on this path for so long. I bought a 160-acre organic farm in Western Mass outside of Amherst, Massachusetts in 1970. With 5 colleagues. We had what some would call a commune. And we raised fruits and veg and chickens. And I did cooking on a wood stove. So that's where I got my start, is cooking on a home comfort stove and baking bread and grinding flour and making pickles and sauerkraut and freezing and canning and all that good stuff out in the country. But I went to naturopathic school and went to grad school, and here we go, we're teaching. So I am a longtime wellness advocate. I really believe that wellness is the path to wholeness. And it's really the bridge that we need right now to deal with all the pain and suffering and conflict that we have. And really food is the greatest way to bring us together. So community building is really my love right now. And that's a photo of Chef Ed in the red coat outside of the Bauman Wellness Center in Berkeley. And there's Chef Lizette. Lizette, are you around? You want to say a few more words?
I am. I'm right here. I was just kind of putting all my stuff together. So gosh, how long have I been with you, Ed? We've written a book together. I've taught many of your classes. And
a good 20 years, a good solid 20.
I know, it's crazy. And so since that time, it's just been wonderful to train all different types of people to learn how to cook for health, and in the chef program and in nutrition essentials. That's another program I taught for. And then just expanding it to, even at Kaiser and various locations, and just sort of spreading this wonderful information around. So you're right. I found my voice going to your school.
You sure did. That's a good one.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so our learning objectives are really about food, love, and healing. And the middle word is really the secret ingredient to all of this. That's the secret sauce. Is we love what we do. We love the plants. We love the food. We love the people. And it's more than just a commodity, or it's more than just a chore. It's really cultivating the healing arts with food and with friends, and then introducing the eating for health approach and talking about a metabolic booster. We had a beautiful talk on COVID earlier today. And one of the things that's so profound is COVID plus climate plus conflict equals exhaustion and depletion. So I'm going to share some ideas on how to build people up. And I like my counting here. I go 1, 2, 3, 5. So 4 could be an interesting kind of mystery segment here. And then, of course, we'll share culinary food magic. And I want to really look at this slide. The picture of the fall leaves, as Oscar Wilde said, and all at once, summer collapsed into fall. So clearly our program's for educational purposes. It's not intended to replace medical diagnosis or treatment. It's eating for health. So healing foods are soul foods. And you go, soul food? Well, I grew up in Washington, D.C., So soul food was pig's feet and grits. And that wasn't health food, but in the Bauman model, soul is seasonal, organic, unprocessed, and local. And then we can also put a dash A, which is affordable and accessible. So it could be soul A. But it's really those seasonal local foods that we enjoy. And they're power foods that build chi. So chi is energy, and we get energy from the air, we get energy from the light, we get energy from nature, we get energy from breathing and just being part of the natural order and being in tune with ourselves and our world. We do not get chi from television. We do not get chi from the news. We do not get chi from conflict and arguments. We may get stimulated, but we're not gaining and nurturing life force, vitality, energy. So these natural foods, largely plant-based, are really carriers of chi. And then these foods are well sourced. We ask, where'd that food come from? Where did that egg come from? Is that a local egg? Is that a caged egg? Is that a pasture-raised egg or something? Or where did that vegetable come from? And even if it's organic, it's just good to ask continually about the source of the food and the proximity to where we are. This bioregion of Northern California is remarkable because it's really a garden of Eden. Luther Burbank came here 100 years ago and propagated 320 new varieties of fruits and vegetables and flowers right up here in Sebastopol, where I live. And his trees are still in my neighborhood, and my yard is got that soil that's part of this beautiful region. And healing foods are foods prepared with love. So when I go to a restaurant, I don't know if the chef loved the food. He might have been, or she might have been having a bad day, or all that kind of energy. Food is a carrier of information. So the beautiful thing about home cooking, and I encourage us all really to take away that notion of we can do home cooking, is we're selecting the food, we're preparing the food, we're eating the food, we're doing it with friends and others, all that good stuff. And then foods that contain healing micronutrients, which are vitamins and minerals. And there's probably 75 to 100 micronutrients. There's a lot more than what you see on a bottle of multivitamins. And then phytonutrients are plant alkaloids that calm inflammation and soothe and heal damaged tissue. And there's 1,000 phytonutrients, even in a single food like an apricot or an almond. There's several hundred phytonutrients in a food that's properly grown and it's eaten in the right way. So healing foods are foods we love, foods that bring chi, foods that are well sourced, that we or others who care about us make, and also have these trace elements and phytonutrients. Cooking for health. How many of us here cook routinely? I have friends from India. There was a yoga teacher who came, and the teacher said, I've never gone out to eat. The guy was 70 years old, beautiful man, a Iyengar teacher. And I said, hey, do you want to go to one of our Indian restaurants? He says, I've never gone out to eat. All the food I've eaten my entire life has been made by my family. And I thought that was really wonderful. And as a physician, cooking is good. We have a program in the school here in the facility called Help Berkeley, where we make food for the community, and it's free. And it's homemade, fresh, soulful food. And I was here the other day, and one of our volunteers came up and he said, do you remember me? And people say this to me all the time. And I looked at him and I go, yeah, I remember you, but I can't quite plug the name. He said, well, I was at your class in 1977, and you taught me about healing foods, and I'm a medical doctor. And I remember what you taught me in 1977, 78, and now I'm back cooking out of your space. And I really appreciate the teachings that you brought. I went, dang, I forget how many people this work is touching, and medical doctors. But, health challenges create the need to eat well. If people eat average okay, they're not going to maintain health in the midst of the struggle that we're in right now. It's just not going to happen. So we've lost our comfort zone. And we've certainly been fed a bunch of really bad food. And maybe a couple of generations now have been eating, food that's not even food. And it's contributed to some of the massive metabolic disorders that people have locally and globally. But when people get sick, it does open up this need to get help and to start to rethink their priorities. People don't really want to change, but they also don't want to be ill. So that's interesting. Plants, animals, and humans, so all living things, depend on nutrients to support health and to protect against pest and pestilence. So we're very disturbed now by pestilence, but it happens and it's going to continue to happen. So our greatest defense is maintaining strength and vitality and chi and family. Impurities in the food, air, water, and media make us ill. So you go, media is in a different category than food, air, and water, but we ingest media daily. There's, thousands of messaging that comes to us subliminally and directly, most of which is toxic, and it's fear-inducing, and it's disturbing. So a media fast, or really limiting media and being very discerning around media, just as we're discerning around food and water and friends, is a path to healing and wholeness. Our environment is a mirror of our inner and outer world, or our health is a mirror of our inner and outer world. Okay. So our health or well-being reflects who we are. Now, we can be in a compromised situation. We can be in the midst of a fire, but we can maintain a certain amount of equanimity and a certain amount of wholeness and a certain amount of intelligence and resourcefulness that builds our resilience. And the resilience factor is what determines our wellness, not the outside world, and not even some of the health challenges that people are going through. So this is a different definition, that it's not just health, it's the ability to function or the absence of disease or good lab work. But wellness is more the ability to respond to adverse circumstance and to be socially mindful. Entropy, which is collapse, is the norm, and resiliency is the process that we're dealing with. And plants that are stressed have more phytonutrients. So it's really remarkable that herbs and spices and vegetables actually amplify the amount of phytonutrients in response to viruses. Plants have viruses, or molds, or bugs, or temperature change. And if they're given adequate water and food, they need that, they become more powerful, as are we. So when we cook, we're looking for these kinds of resources. This is an idea of a self-healing operating system. When we're born, they didn't give us the manual. So this wellness mode that we're discussing is really moving from otherness and illness to wellness and oneness. So in my mind, it's to always embrace the whole. So that's the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's not just my family. That's not just the Bay Area, but the whole world. And then to nourish and integrate the parts. So we embrace the whole, we recognize the circumstance, we see the pain points, and then we identify what are the parts and how can we feed them, heal them, care about them, show compassion towards them, and then integrate them into a higher sense of community. We need to replenish depleted resources to the compromised systems and barrier defense. So barrier defense is your nose, your mucous membrane, your gut lining, the microbiome. So because we're exposed to so many toxic materials and energies, we're depleted. And whatever bank account we had of nutrition that was given to us at birth, and then it was managed as we were a teenager, and very often mismanaged, because young people don't really want to build health. They just want to have fun and be excited. So again, what this leads to is early illness and early vulnerabilities and a host of mental and physical emotional imbalances. So we just have to replenish these resources and then be skillful at distinguishing friend and foe. So we know who our friends are. We probably even know what the foes are. But we also have to distinguish truth from falsehood and from enough from too much. So that's maturity. That's discernment. And we have this sensitivity that when we approach something, we feel good, we feel safe, we feel warm, we feel love, we feel expanded, or we feel afraid, or we feel defended, or we feel sick. So this is our guide. This is our innate intelligence and our innate sensibility around distinguishing good and bad and true and false. Because listening to other people's opinions is truly only their opinion. And with the pandemic, everyone's been wrong. Okay, there's nobody I know who had this one nailed from the get-go, or whatever they recommended was categorically true. You know, it's we're all different. We're all going through different experiences. So the independent investigation of truth and to be your own person, to have agency within yourself, is really a key to making good choices and also being happy and healthy. So we do have to detoxify, and liquids help us detoxify. Herbs and spices help us detoxify. Bitters and astringents, which we'll hear about in our next talk on herbs and spices, stimulate our cells, our tissues to offload waste and stored material. And then we need to diversify. So nutritionally, we need to diversify. We need hundreds of micronutrients, and we need a different diversity of diet. Same diet over time loses value. And we need to diversify our relationships and our attitudes and our, all that stuff. It's so beautiful. You look at diversity in nature and diversity within ourselves and our families. And this is the key forward to a self-healing operating system. And we need to declare the truth. We need to be strong enough and courageous enough to say what's real for us. And this is the truth as I know it. You have the truth as you know it. And if your truth and my truth differ, we do the Japanese bow and we go, I hear you. That's all. I hear you. It's fine. I accept your truth. I hope you'll accept my truth. And then you affirm your sovereignty, which is your sense of entitlement to be a human being. That we don't have to argue for our humanity. And whatever isms we have, whatever ologies that we carry are divisive. But the only thing that remains really is just the sense of we're all living beings going through a difficult time right now. So we want to pull together. And then for self-healing, just practice, lifestyle practice, stretch, breathe, stride. I like stride. I put that down. It's like take a big giant step forward. Don't freeze. Breathe and stride, and then harmonize and unify. So we don't sing the same song, or we don't sing the same song in the same voice, but we listen and we harmonize together. And foods is the greatest carrier of that, because that's what flavors of health is harmonizing and blending and creating a unified, wholesome dish. So that's our self-healing operating system to move us from illness to wellness to oneness. Eating is certainly a choice, and we have the buffet of life here. There's so many choices. And, you go, which one is calling to me right now? Is it the broccoli? Is it the 2 flavors of ice cream? Is it the oily fish, or is it the crunchy fried chicken? And if you mix those things together, you're going to have some interesting digestive upset. And that's, again, part of lack of discernment for people, as they just eat whatever they feel like sometimes, and it can be difficult. Levels of eating is a model I created some time back, which really defines the Bauman approach. And it's moving from convenience to conscious eating. And the first level is eating for pleasure. And you go, well, what's wrong with that? Well, nothing. Albeit it tends to be a very childlike level of consciousness, and it tends to lean more towards sugars and refined foods and snack foods and treat foods and indulgence and emotional and stress eating. So again, one can eat for pleasure and have broccoli and fish, but ice cream and fried chicken is more of the eating for pleasure type of food. And if it's unchecked, and that's the only eating pattern, it's going to lead to ill health. Level 2 is eating for energy, and that's keeping your blood sugar stable, eating every 3 or 4 hours if you need to. Some people don't. And eating food that has macronutrients, protein, fats, and carbohydrates. So in America, most people have enough to eat. Most people get enough calories. They don't necessarily get enough trace elements. So a burrito, a sandwich, a piece of pizza would be eating for energy. A sports drink, a coffee is eating for energy. Level 3 is eating for recovery, and that usually is what happens when someone comes to see me or one of the Bauman nutrition people, is they have health issues. They have mental issues, physical issues, social issues, metabolic issues, immune issues, cognitive function issues, all those things, which tend to be all part of the same complex of depletion and toxicity. So eating for recovery is very much about simplification. And typically we'll recommend eat a more plant-based diet or a totally plant-based diet, or knock off the typical food sensitivity triggers like wheat, sugar, dairy, corn, soy, some of those type things. So it's, rather than calling it elimination diet, people go into deprivation when they're eliminating. So if you eat bagel and cream cheese and you come to see Jeffrey Marks, who's a premier nutrition consultant, and he says, sorry, no more bagels and cream cheese for you. That's going to be a tough one unless you have something to eat as an alternative to that is part of your healing foods and is satisfying and local. So it's a conversation. Eating for health is not over the top telling people what to do. And then we move from level 3 to level 4, which is eating for health, which is a state of choice. And you're choosing between good options. That's important. You're not choosing between refined and unrefined or between healthy and unhealthy. You're choosing between, well, which vegetables shall we have today? What are seasonal vegetables? Which fats shall we have today? What are a variety of good fats? Which protein shall we have? Should we have a mix of animal, vegetable, dairy proteins or not, or seeds and nuts and so forth? But eating for health is very liberating. And usually you go through a period of eating for recovery where you're on a very limited diet that tends to tap out after 3 or 4 months, if that. And you could go down and go back to eating for energy and go, who cares? Or you could go up and go eating for health, I care. And it's not always the what, but how. How, when, how much, what level of mindfulness comes forward. And then the 5th level is spiritual nourishment, where we pray with the food and we really respect the food and we give gratitude that this food came from the earth and there were people who brought this food to us. And this food is really part of the life force. It's part of the chi. It's part of the natural world, and so are we. And at that point, we typically eat less. We may even do a fast or a modified fast. And simplify even further. Or if we eat food that's not really up to our level of wholeness and healthy, we bless it and we take it with gratitude rather than throw a fit. Because there's nothing worse than someone at the dinner table putting a lecture down or throwing a fit about food and kind of ruining the meal for those people who are present, but really bringing spiritual consciousness and gratitude to our food. The Eating for Health model you see here, and now it's Eating for Health and Resilience. And it's a beautiful model. It's a nice mandala to look at. And we can have copies of this chart for people to gather in PDF form. And I won't go through each of the categories, but the thing that's important is beverages are on this model, that beverages are as important or more important than food. And pure water is the premier beverage, and it's hard to find pure water because the air and the soil have been hit with so many chemicals But a water filter is a good idea, and we had a beautiful talk on the power and the meaning of water and how that works. And then fresh juice is liquids from organic food with all that vibrant phytonutrient in a juice form. And the old question is, well, should it be a smoothie with the pulp, or should it be a juice where the pulp's been extracted? And for somebody who wants a high absorption of the beta carotenes and the bioflavonoids and quercetins, juice is very powerful. So it's not either or, it's both and. But juice is really the nectar of the gods. And then mineral broth is typically a vegetable broth, or it can be a bone broth for people who want to make a broth where they're boiling bones from fish or chicken or other animal sources, and they can mix herbs and spices. Or if it's a vegetable broth, they do a root vegetable, they do green vegetables, they do sea vegetables, they do shiitake mushrooms, flax seeds, herbs and spices. So that's the Bauman broth, which is restorative. And it's also very calming and nourishing and very digestible. And then herbal teas, which are really a keynote for minerals and for phytonutrients. So even for people who drink coffee, there's no reason they can't drink coffee and black tea and green tea and herbal tea and tea tinctures and all the above. So that's just a little discourse on water. And then, as you can see, this model provides macronutrients, which are protein, fats, and carbs, micronutrients, which are vitamin and minerals, phytonutrients, which are plant alkaloids that are protective and heal damaged tissue. So this is the greatest thing about a plant-based diet, where people who eat a predominant of plants, it's not the absence of animals that makes them healthy. So the difference between a vegan and an omnivore is they could both have quite a lot of plants. They could have 2, 3, 4, 5 servings of plants in each meal. And some have it as plant only, and some have it with animal food. But you can be a vegan and eat fairly mediocre processed food. So the absence of animal foods alone is really not the key here. It's the phytonutrients from really good quality plant sources, which provide fibers, fluids, ferments, and ferments are little microorganisms on the food, and the microorganisms which create a healthy biome and support a balanced and modulated immune force. In our COVID talk, I was thinking about bringing in the microbiome, but it didn't find a place. But as people are going through a viral problem or a treatment protocol that is inflammatory, their gut biome is severely dysregulated. So getting good, healthy, organic, local foods and fibers and fluids and ferments and mushrooms in particularly are very powerful and very helpful. Here's a picture of a well-balanced plate with portions and proportions. And most of us overeat. So on this plate, and this is really just a baseline, is at least half is vegetables, and it can be partially raw and partially cooked. Certain vegetables are better raw, and certain vegetables are actually more absorbable cooked, particularly the carotenes. So a lot of those leafy greens and oranges are fat soluble and need oil for absorption. So whether it's a salad with a dressing or it's something that's been sauteed, there you go. And then you need good fats. And some people can handle quite a bit more fat. So right here, it looks like a fairly modest amount, but depending on their metabolism, this is it. And then some fat and some starch and protein. And it's fine to have more vegetables over starches if you're on a particular nutritional healing program. So your plate could be 2/3 vegetables, 3/4 vegetables, 80 or 90% vegetables. And what's interesting is mushrooms have a higher concentration of protein than any animal food or any vegetable food. So I like trumpet mushrooms. They're a big, sturdy mushroom. They cook up really well. They're delicious. Very, very satisfying, great fibers, have vitamin D, nourishment, good stuff. And then, as I say, beverages, tea is just my favorite food. And tea could be conceived of as Camellia sinensis, which is green tea that's also made into black tea, but I consider tisane, which is herbal beverages, teas as well. But what we have is water plus plants equals tea. So in your drinking water, you certainly can put mint or rosemary or thyme, or you can put burdock or other kind of roots and seeds and leaves in your tea. And then here's a recipe for green tea with mint. And the interesting thing about mint is the high level of rosmarinic acid, which is an antiviral compound. And the Camellia sinensis is an antiviral compound. So with this COVID shadow hanging over us, there's quite a bit of to do about medicine, but there's very little mention of humble, simple plants. And you can get uncaffeinated green tea if that's your desire, and add lemon, water, honey to it. Well, what do you know? Here's the Flavors of Health cookbook, your guide for eating for health with Dr. Ed and Chef Lizette. And that's a spectacular cookbook. It's the greatest cookbook of all times. Well, maybe I'm biased. And then Spice for Life, Self-Healing Recipes, Remedies, and Research by Dr. Ed and Sheila Murphy. So these contain tremendous amount of information as well as recipes with gorgeous photographs by Chris Bauman.
And it's just wonderful to be able to share some of my favorite flavors. I love fall. I love the flavors that come with that season, and all of the beautiful vegetables and fruits that are available right now. I am going to be celebrating a lot of those spices, Ed. And so today we are going to be making our own chai spice blend to use. You can use it in a tea if you want to make, well, chai means tea, but you can blend it with a black tea or green tea if you like. You could use it as part of a spice rub. I'm just making sort of the dry, kind of all the dry ingredients together. And then we're going to make a really wonderful salad. This is a salad using roasted winter squashes, yams, and even the Stokes purple potatoes that you see out there. If anyone has not tried them, I'm going to show you all of these things in a minute. And then this is tossed in a pomegranate miso vinaigrette. And then our last recipe is a dessert, and it's a pomegranate chai poached pear with a chocolate ginger sauce. And so I'm kind of celebrating spice, but I'm also celebrating the pomegranate, because I always get really excited about this season because they come out. We have 2 pomegranate trees outside, not bearing fruit yet, but I can't wait till the day when they do. So let me get started by preparing the chai spices. So for a chai spice blend, we're going to toast the spices. And while you could buy this at the store already done for you, when you get a chance to make your own, you're not going to go back, because the potency of freshly toasted spices and freshly ground spices, there's nothing like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a dry saute pan. So I just get a pan here, just make sure it isn't wet and doesn't need any oil. And then you want to just turn on your heat to about a medium low. Just get the pan hot. We're going to add the largest spices first. So I have 4 cinnamon sticks right here. So I'm just going to add those in. And then I also have some star anise. So it's not required in a chai, but I love the smell of the star anise. It's got a nice licorice smell to it, and also combines really well with my other spice here, which is the fennel seeds. So I'm going to add these in a moment. I'm going to start with these larger spices first. I'm going to add some a little bit of allspice. And you know, allspice, it's its own spice. It's not like all the spices. When I was a little kid, I used to think it was all the spices. So, you know, funny things you used to think when you're a little kid. And another spice that we're going to be using is cardamom pods. So then we have some black peppercorns, because you want a little bit of a kick. At least I like a little bit of kick. So I have about 8. So my recipe lists the amount of spices that you'll need to make the amount that I'm making here. You can always double it, make even a larger batch. So now we just let that toast. Let me just get a little spoon here. All right. And you're going to want to watch this a little bit. Don't walk away whenever you're toasting spices or nuts on the stovetop or in the oven. You want to stay in your kitchen, stay nearby, because what usually happens when you're toasting spices is you smell them before you visualize whether they're ready or not. So don't look for like round areas really so much as just close your eyes and see if you can smell them. And sometimes you have to kind of lean over a little bit, see if you can smell it. It's coming through, and then move them around so they don't get scorched, because you don't want them to scorch. Okay, so these are almost ready. I'm going to now add my fennel seeds. So it really just takes a few minutes. And the fennel seeds are going to start actually popping on me because I have the heat at a medium heat, but I got a pretty powerful stove. They're going to work right away. So you see, I'm just lifting them out because they are toasting. Now, we're going to add all those spices into a mortar and pestle. So I'm going to set this aside here. Let me just set my dried spices out of the way. And now we're going to break these up in a mortar and pestle. And I like the initial, working with a mortar and pestle first. You could always finish them in a spice grinder if you want your grind to be a little finer. I like more of a coarse grind. And I can get that quality by just simply breaking them up here, making sure nothing pops out. Now, one thing you're going to want to be aware of when you're grinding spices, especially if it's chilies, but even if it's spiciness that aren't hot, like the cinnamon and the star anise, is that aroma is going to come wafting up. So be careful when you're breathing, because you might cough. Sort of a occupational hazard here. It's a good one. I'm getting really nicely dosed here with my spices. It's aromatherapy on overdrive. And then what I do is I actually stir it and grind those spices right against the wall of the mortar. All right. So now I'm almost there. Now, if I want, and I'm just going to show this to you. If I want, I can actually grind to a powder. So I'm going to grind some of this and just keep it kind of mostly chunky. So I'm just going to add a few that are just a little chunkier, and then keep this more coarse grind right here just the way it is. And then, okay. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to add my powdered spices. And I didn't toast these mainly because they have enough flavor. You could, if you want to, lightly toast them, but it would be just for a few seconds. I'm going to skip that bit for today and just mix that in. So it's a lot of ginger. So I use about 6 tablespoons for this measure. And I like that ginger flavor. If you want a little less ginger, just use less ginger. So I'm going to add the rest of these spices in and just stir it together. Okay, and now just put it in a jar and label it, and you have your chai spice blend. So I get most of this in here. Okay. Beautiful healing spices, warming, perfect for this season. And you could make a full jar of this. Like I said, you could just times it by 2 or 3, and you get a little more in there. And it'll keep for about 2 months. It's really nice and fresh. Any longer, it starts to lose its potency. But if you keep it in a darker jar than this one, like you could use an amber jar, it might even last a little longer. It doesn't last very long in my house because this time of year, I'll be reaching for this blend quite often, not just for tea, but for also flavoring desserts and even flavoring roasted vegetables. So it's really a wonderful thing to make. Our next recipe is the salad. So I need to get that going. And actually, I did a little work ahead of time just so that you wouldn't have to watch me roast things. But I'm going to show you how I put it together, okay? So I want to introduce you to several different types of vegetables that you can use in this salad. We can use a butternut squash, a delicata, and a kabocha. So these are three of some of my favorite. You could also use acorn squash, or there's so many other types of winter squashes that you could use for the salad. So these are the three that I got today at Farmer's Market. And in addition to that, you can just bring in some yams. I have a combination of Japanese white yam and some garnet yam, and they've been roasting, so I'll show you those in a little bit. And then also the purple potato, which is just such a unique root vegetable here. So I love this one because of the color. It's something like, wow, nature will bring you almost every color. And when you cook with the rainbow and you choose those different colors, you're going to get different types of antioxidants from your foods. And it's just, I don't know. It's not only is it healthy for you, but I find it to be super fun. So for this delicata squash, I just wanted to show you a little bit how we cut it up. So what I did ahead of time is I cut the ends of, this is a smaller one here. I cut the ends to get a stable base. And then we cut it straight down. And now we have the interior here, which reveals some of the seeds. And when I was peeling and getting all my veggies prepped up for this demo, I save all of them in what we call another earth bowl. And the reason why I do that is because I'm going to use this to make some mineral broth later. And that was one of the things that I did for many years with my husband, Jeff, is participate. And actually, we were the lead chefs at the Vitality Fasting Retreats, and we made gallons and gallons of mineral broth. Doing this very technique, we would use different vegetables and use all of the seeds and the vegetables with the peel on, even the onion skins, and make these amazing magical mineral broths. They are so incredibly healing. So don't waste your scraps. Your scraps are your future broth. And you can use that as a base for your soups. You can even use it as a sipping broth. So that's how I prep up the delicata squash. And you'll also notice that I don't peel it. I think this is so beautiful that I don't really want to peel that skin. I want to see that when I roast it in my salad. I think it's going to look gorgeous. Something like the kabocha, scrub it really well. In a long braise or a stew, you can keep the skins on, but again, it's a preference thing. It's a little bit thicker, so you might want to peel this one. So again, that's all preference. So here, as you can see, I roasted these with olive oil, sea salt, a little bit of garlic powder, and that's it. And I just roasted them at 350 for about 35 minutes. And they come nice and tender. Fork tender is what you want. But you want nice little chunks. You don't want like tiny little dice, but something that's good and bite-sized. And so these right here, these purple ones here, those are the Stokes purple potatoes, which are purple yams, sorry. There's also purple potatoes. So, and these, oh goodness, these are the delicata squash. So you can see here how pretty that stripe is. You want to keep it. It's gorgeous. And so I'm like, you're totally eating with your eyes here. You can see here, I roasted these shiitake mushrooms ahead of time. And I just tossed them in a little bit of olive oil, sea salt. You can put a little smidge of sesame oil in there. And I used to like to use a toasted sesame oil. Just roast them at 350 for about 20 minutes. Come out just like that, nice and toasty. And I put them on a piece of parchment paper. I line my baking tins with this because these are aluminum. They conduct heat beautifully, but they're not such a great thing to roast your vegetables directly on. So parchment paper is a good barrier to use for your vegetables. I'm going to jump ahead and go to our dessert because I need to kind of get that ready while I'm making my dressing. Just trying to kind of time this whole demo so that we get everything done pretty much at the same time. So remember I said I was going to make a poached pear. So before we start, we need to get our poaching liquid going. So to do that, we're going to use about 3 cups of water. And then I'm going to add some pomegranate juice. So this is just fresh, pure pomegranate juice that I'm going to add in here. So it's going to stain it like as if you were going to be poaching your pears in red wine, for instance. But we're just using pomegranate. Then I'm going to add some maple syrup. This will sweeten the deal, about 2 tablespoons right there. And then we're going to add our spices. So I have star anise, cinnamon. I have also our cardamom pods. Then we add some orange peel. So just add that right in. And then we also want a few panels of ginger. So since I'm going to add the spice, I'm just going to do one good-sized panel of ginger because this is very ginger forward, the spice blend. All right, let's get some of that spice blend in here. I have a little bit left in this mortar and pestle. So I'm going to use like about a tablespoon. That's about 2. And there's a full tablespoon. And I did eyeball that, but a little experience gets you there. Okay, so now we stir that up. And now we add a little more sweet essence. So I'm going to add some dates and some mission figs. And I slice them up so I could distribute them throughout this mixture. Okay, and now I'm going to turn on the heat. Kind of turn it down so you get a nice simmer. And with that, you can add loose leaf tea if you like. I like to do it with the bags just because it's easier when I make the next thing, which is our chocolate sauce. So we're going to add I'm using a rooibos chai tea. You can also just use plain rooibos tea. You could use black tea. You could use green tea. It's up to you how you want to do this. You could even skip the tea and just make it a spice decoction here. So now we're adding the 3 tea leaves. Just going to press those down and bring that to a simmer. And while that's happening, let me show you some of the pears that you can use. You can use any type of pear pretty much. I have several different kinds here. I even have some Asian pears, which you could also poach in this recipe. I have the Anjou, I have a Bartlett, and I also have a really nice red pear right here. So something I want to explain to you, when you prep it, you do need to peel it. Infuse the flavor of this spice tea here that I'm making, this chai, into the fruit. So it also kind of, once you poach it, the texture, it's not really great. And you want a really nice eating experience. When you're eating this, you don't want like goopy peel getting caught up in your teeth. So please peel. Since I did it ahead of time, I soak it in a little bit of acidulated water, which just basically means water with a tiny bit of lemon juice, and that way they don't brown too much. So I'm going to take my pear out that I've peeled, and then we're going to take the core out. So I have this special little tool. It's a little prepping tool that you can use to get it out. Now, if you don't have this, just use a small paring knife, or you can use a spoon to remove the core. And it's just this little bit right here. Now, when I remove this right now, it does remind me that you could, like a baked apple, baked pears, and you could put that little filling right in that center, right here, which is pretty nice. The narrow end of this tool here also allows you to get the stem bit. So I don't go all the way up the top because I don't want to take out the stem at the top. It's sort of decorative. So there's a method here. So there's my prepared pear. This is a Bartlett. Now, Bartlett's interesting because a Bartlett is much softer than this Anjou here. So this one's a little less ripe too, but it does tend, these Bartletts, when they're ripe, they do get quite soft. So that brings up another little point I want to make about this recipe. It's better to use a fruit that isn't too ripe, because if it's too ripe, it's not going to have the same effect, the poaching. You want a slightly firm fruit. So let's do the other two. So this whole time I've been talking, I've got this beautiful poaching liquid. It's just so ready. So now we add the pears right in. Before I move on, let me just put a little bit of that poaching liquid right on top. Okay.
How hot is the liquid, Lizette? Is it warm, medium, or low, or high?
It's low. So it's just a simmer. So it's below, quite technically, it's below 250 degrees because, or 212 degrees, sorry. Boiling point starts at 212. Yeah. So I know that it's low. It's probably about 180.
And how long will they poach in there?
They can poach up to, I mean, you could poach it for an hour, but I usually only go to 20 because if you go too high, especially if they're ripe, they might get too soft.
Yeah,
so about
sure.
20 minutes, depending on the ripeness of the pear. Now, one thing I also want to mention is that it doesn't, like, you know, if you poach in a red wine or something like that, it stains. You'll see pictures on Pinterest and things like that of poached pears in red wine, and they look very red. This won't get there. The pomegranate juice will only stain it somewhat, and the spices will only stain it somewhat. So that you're not looking for a bright red color or a brown color or caramel color. You're looking for, can I pierce it easily with a knife or even a butter knife? Does it cut very easily? You know it's ready. And about 15, 20 minutes is usually the optimal time. Okay, so while I'm making the dressing for the salad, these pears are going to poach. So here's what's in the dressing. Let me just introduce you and then we'll get it all together. So we have some pomegranate molasses, and there's just a touch of toasted sesame oil, white miso. So a sweet white miso works really well. If you have a darker miso, that's okay, but I do like the subtlety of this because there's a lot going on with the pomegranate molasses. So it pairs really nicely. Some Dijon mustard, and I have some apple cider vinegar, extra virgin olive oil, and fresh squeezed orange juice. So that, and then also the shallot. So let me get that shallot ready first because we want to slice the shallot really nicely. So actually I'm going to dice it, but you could also slice it really thin. So just going to take that end out and this end. And then because it's a big one, I'm just going to cut it in half so I have a nice flat surface again. And then we're just going to take the front end of the knife and just make little cuts here. Move the hand out of the way and then cut across. So I want a nice fine dice here, and I'll probably run my knife across it. Okay, and then I'm going to finish that with, after I cut this one down. We just want that little bit of cut here. And that, when you dice it, I mean, you could slice it. If you slice the shallot, you just have bigger pieces in the salad, which is fine. Just finely cut it. Chop across, hold your hand right on the top of the knife, keep it out of the way. Okay, so that is our shallot. I'm going to do the whisking method. So there's a lot of ways to put together a salad dressing, and this one I'm going to whisk.
Lizette, what would be the difference in flavor between a shallot and a scallion chop?
The scallion.
Would scallions be a little bit hotter and a little?
Yeah, it really all depends on the vegetable, because I might say to somebody, well, that shallot is slightly sweeter. Yeah. But sometimes you get a spicy shallot. So there's sometimes, you get a surprise. Generally, they tend to be sweeter. And the scallion, it tends to be more herbaceous. So it has because of the green stem and then the white area. So it's a little more cleaner. It's kind of fresher. Mm-hmm. This shallot has a slightly sweeter flavor. Okay. That's generally. And this one is not too, and I know when they're really spicy, because when they're spicy, if you cut into it, you start tearing up a lot. You've got a pretty potent shallots.
You want to get little ones, medium ones, or big ones?
I'm using a big one, and the big one tends to be less potent. The smaller ones,
it's more starch. More starch.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's because they're younger, isn't it? So let's see. Now let's put in the dressing. So we're going to add the Dijon mustard right into the bowl. And then I'm going to add all the kind of sticky things first. So I'm adding the miso next. Okay. And then I'm going to add the sesame seed oil, the toasted sesame seed. Make sure it's toasted. That's where all the flavor is. The light sesame oil doesn't really, it doesn't change it. I love the toasted sesame. Really, that flavor comes forward. and you only need a very small amount, like 1 to 2 teaspoons. Then we have our pomegranate molasses, and then let's add the fresh squeezed orange juice. So I'm adding the acids now. Fresh squeezed orange juice, not that acidy, but it's a sweet acid. Then we add the apple cider vinegar, and then get a whisk and just kind of break this up. And also while you're doing that, turn your heat down if you get too much of a bubble on those poached pears. You want them poaching, you don't want them boiling. So I got a bubble, so I reduced the heat. So now we just whisk, and then we add a little bit of sea salt. So you need sea salt to your dressing. So when you're making dressing, you want to balance your flavors. You want salty, you want sweet, you want acidic or sour. You want all those flavors coming through. And then you want that savory flavor as well. And then also the flavor of fat, which is right in this oil. So it's also a flavor. So we're going to use our extra virgin olive oil. And I'm just kind of pouring it and whisking at the same time so I can emulsify my dressing. Now, a quick way, like if I'm catering, I'll put all this stuff in a jar and shake the jar because the shaking will emulsify my dressing. Today I'm getting fancy for my demo and just showing you all how to emulsify and whisk at the same time. So you just kind of get that in there, pour it in a little bit at a time. And if you see a little bit of oil around the outer perimeter, which generally happens, whisk a little faster and just keep going. And then you have a dressing. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to balance it. So something that I didn't mention is the Dijon mustard acts as an emulsifier. So it helps to.
Yeah.
So it kind of gives you a little help when you're making a dressing. And again, like it's like almost immediately when you do it this way, you'll see the separation, but that's fine. I'm not worried about it because I've got one more step. I'm going to show you. It's a little trick when you're tossing your greens and everything. Okay, so I just want to taste it. So a couple things. I'm going to taste it off the spoon. That's really good. But then I'm going to taste it off of a leaf. So I've got a really nice kale leaf here. I mean, I used the whole thing. You want to know if your dressing is balanced when you taste it on the leaf that you're going to toss it in. So I'm picking the more stronger flavored leaf, which is my baby kale. The spinach isn't as strong, but you know, everyone, whatever you've got, whatever you're using your salad for. That's really good, but it needs a little bit of cracked pepper. Almost forgot that bit. And then whisk. Okay, now I'm ready to put this salad together. So, grab a big bowl. I'm not going to use all this dressing. This is enough dressing to use for the salad. You can use, you know, I like to go a little on the lighter side. This recipe and this dressing, I would say probably yields a little more than you need, which is a good news because you can use it for another salad. You can also use it as a marinade. So you can marinate chicken in it, you can marinate fish, you can marinate tempeh, whatever you'd like. Okay, so I'm going to put about just a quarter for the amount that I'm making. I'm going to give it another whisk. Perfectly emulsified now. And now the first thing I'm going to add is my shiitake mushrooms and my roasted vegetables. So all the roasted vegetables go in first.
Can you explain mise en place a little bit?
Yes. So a mise en place, basically what mise en place means is to put everything in its place. So when you saw me putting together this dressing, for example, I had everything in little bowls.
Yeah.
Put to you again, right? So I measured everything out and put them into little containers to put everything in its place. And before I started, I also had all my cut vegetables. I had them all separated into bowls. You know, if you're like only cooking for yourself, you can put like items together. For instance, put all the vegetables that you're cutting that you know are going to cook at the same rate. You can put them all in the same bowl and toss them with your oil. And that's what I did with these root vegetables. The mushrooms, though, they cook at a different rate. So I'm going to prep those separately. So mise en place simply means to put it all in its place. When you look at a recipe, look at all the ingredients you need first. So read the recipe from start to finish. Look at everything you need. Prep up what you need. Yep. That way, when you get to the instructions, it's so much easier to put it together.
Right. It's very organized. So it's highly organized. And you also use both hands. I noticed your left, right are both active. It's not like a one-handed chef.
No. You get used to it after a while, and you realize the efficiency of planning ahead. So good planning. If you have a recipe that you're working off of, you need to familiarize with it before you just dive in, because you might find out. I remember when I was younger, before I went to culinary school, I wanted to try. I was very ambitious. I loved to try different recipes. And I would suddenly find out in step 2 or 3 that I had to marinate something overnight or do some process that was going to take me so much more time. And then you get all messed up. So that's upsetting. So we don't want that. All right. So I just tossed the roasted vegetables with the shiitake mushrooms. And now I'm going to add my leeks. So now these are baby greens, but they're still a little bit big on the big side. So I'm just going to tear them and add them in. And this salad can be as leafy as you want it to. I like it nice and leafy. So add your greens and then toss them in. So I usually add about a third of what I want. I kind of just judge based on the size of my bowl. What do I have in front of me? So a lot about cooking and cooking mindfully is being aware, like really simply paying attention to what's happening in front of you and what you have to work with. So I'm going to do that again. And I'm doing this in the clear bowl so you can see what I'm doing.
I'm hungry. I'm really hungry.
Together.
Are
you getting hungry?
Yeah, I'm really hungry.
I wish I could send this to you. Okay, so now let me just, I think this is about the amount of greens I want for this amount. Okay, so let's give it a good toss, and then we have 2 more things to add, and then this salad is done. Now, I know I got enough dressing when the leaves are nice and shiny, but they're not wet. So you don't want drenched leaves. You don't need that much dressing. One of your favorite seeds, and I got some sesame seeds, not flax, I did sesame, which are a great source of calcium.
I never met a seed I didn't like, so it's okay. Yeah.
Okay, and then I have some pistachios, so dry roasted pistachios. And the other thing that I could add here, which I'm just looking over, is this pomegranate here. So I'm going to just break this open and add some of those pomegranate seeds in there and just break them up. And it looks so beautiful. The salad is fall. It says fall to me.
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah, so that is the salad. So let me see if you guys can see it.
Present that salad.
Beautiful.
Nice. Yum, yum, yum.
We got our pears. They're done. So what I'm going to do is take a slotted spoon. I'm going to let a few of them go ahead and stick around. The softer ones are more done. These are really nice. So I'm just going to add them to a plate. I just want to turn them over. Turn over as well as I wanted it to. There we go.
So easy. Yeah.
A little slippery. And then let me add one more. Let me add this au jus. With that, I have the stem, so I can kind of turn it over.
Yeah, that's
okay,
so pretty.
Aren't they pretty?
That's
so now,
gorgeous. Yeah.
Isn't it beautiful? So we have one more fun thing to do.
Okay.
I make a sauce with this. Remember, there's a chocolate ginger sauce. So good. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some of our poaching liquid, and I'm just going to add it right into a blender. And I'm going to put about a cup of it in. So if you're making the full recipe, take out your pears. Do it like I'm doing it exactly. I'm just sort of speeding it up. And then remember that in this sauce, you want the sweeteners. So the sweet element here is not just the poaching liquid. It's also finding the fig. Okay, so find the figs and then get a few. I'm not making the full amount of sauce here, so I'm going to find some dates. And so the little date pieces I have are going to go in, but not the spices, okay? Because that would make it a little too. It might even make it bitter. So something that when you're flavoring things, people love the flavor of cinnamon, right? But cinnamon, you have to be aware that cinnamon will get bitter. If you're like, I'm giving up sugar, maybe you're doing a sugar detox or something, so you put, cinnamon on your yams. Yeah. More is not going to get sweeter. More will make it bitter. Okay.
Any tips on how to sell pears crisp but ripe enough to eat? Are you saying, just the pear before it's cooked when you buy a pear or pick a pear, or
pick one that's firm. It shouldn't be rock hard, but it should be firm. It shouldn't be squishy when you're so you should be able to kind of feel that, okay, this is a little under, like I wouldn't want to eat this raw, but when you poach it, beautiful. But if it's already raw,
and smell it, that it has some essence coming out.
So we puree this. Puree it so it's smooth. Let me just move a few things out of my way. Now we're going to take that liquid and we're just going to reduce it really quickly. So this is where you turn the heat up. So I'm going to add it in. And then I turn up the heat and then get it to boil. So this takes about 5 minutes to get it down because it's not that much liquid, so it's going to reduce quick. And then I'm going, while that's happening, if you haven't measured out your chocolate yet, I have some really dark chocolate.
Yeah.
Chocolate. So the darker the better, 85%, 75% or up. Okay, that's the best. So this is about 85% chips that I have here, and really good quality dark chocolate. And I'm going to get this liquid hot, but I'm going to add that hot liquid to here. So I'm not going to put the chocolate in the pot. Okay, if you do that, you're more likely to make the chocolate seize on you. This is a much gentler way to do it. It'll produce a nice glossy sauce. And so while that's happening, while I'm waiting, you can get all of your garnishes ready. So I've got an orange here, and I'm just going to make some really nice curls. I just want some pretty little tendrils. So I take that little tendril, and I'm just going to put it right here. I'll grab it when I'm ready. Okay. Okay, so already we're boiling beautifully. Set that aside. And then the other, this is an optional garnish. I have some candied ginger. This is sort of the more decadent sweet tooth version. You don't have to do this, but just one is enough. So I just cut it, and then I just give it a little dice, or you can cut it in strips, whatever looks nice to you. Watch your heat. I've got a good boil here because I want to get this reduced fast. So now we're going to take the chocolate. We're just going to pour this right on top. Wait till it kind of calms down a little bit. And then slowly. You hear that sizzle, guys? Okay.
I in my mind, I think a little ghee could go in there too. Is that something that?
Oh yeah, you can stir in ghee. I have butter, but you can stir in ghee. That would work really well.
Cream it a little bit because it's creaming it is nice.
Yeah, so I've got the butter here. Just a tablespoon of ghee. You can also use coconut oil if you want to keep it plant-based. So we just stir this until it is completely melted. I'll add the butter in now. Butter's pretty hot. And then you add it in, and now we're making our beautiful chocolate sauce. This is such a good dish, and it's very grown up. I realize it's like a really grown up dish.
Elegant, yeah.
Very elegant. And you will likely have extra chocolate sauce, which, I don't know anyone who'll complain about that.
No, hardly.
A lot of ways.
Hardly. Yeah.
So with the pear, you can just slice it and then fan it. Okay. So I fan, slice.
Presentation.
presentation is beautiful. And I have these kind of opposite, so like I'm cutting across the side here. And then fanning just by pressing down a little bit. This is a little firmer, but it works. You just got to coax it a little. Okay, that looks really nice. It's a little bit of spice. Different ways you can plate this. Some people like to see the shape of the pear, really pretty, just the way it is, which I do. So I'll put it around, or you could set it on a pool of chocolate. Okay, which I didn't do, but we're going to get that effect by just carefully placing it all around the pear, and then just kind of, so it's like on a little chocolate lake. I like the contrast of that over just drizzling it on top. So you can just kind of move it around. You got a lake of chocolate. Then we add our ginger and just kind of sprinkle it around. And then we have our beautiful little tendrils of orange peel. You could also crush a little bit of these pistachios, do a little pistachio dust. I'm going to put a few whole pistachios. So like you see how things kind of, I have my recipe, but then you start to improv a little as you go. And then, of course, you can't forget a little bit of these beautiful pomegranates, which are just like jewels on top. Look at that. I need to have a fancy dinner, Ed.
Yeah, it's looking good. I'm coming by. Really, I love your food.
You come by. All right, everyone. So there it is. There's our poached pear with our ginger chocolate sauce, garnished with some pomegranate seeds, like little jewels, some orange zest. I threw in a few pistachios and some candied ginger. So that is our demo for today. We have our salad. So I've got my main, I got my dessert. I've got my spices all ready for the next recipe. And that is today's demo.
Oh, that's so great. So let's go gallery view. And those of us who are here, show some love to Lizette. And also, just share, yay. Yay. She's so my favorite, I can't tell you. And she and I did a course called Nutrition Essentials for Everyone. And it's available on the Bauman Wellness site. And there's 6 lessons, and in each lesson, she prepares 3 dishes, and I give nutrition talks. So it's kind of like this, and it's just so yummy. And then we do side-by-side lifestyle lessons together, and we put together this book. And in this book, Lizette created quite the guide of how to get your kitchen together, and how to get shopping, and how to the techniques of this. She's been a master instruction for Bauman College, for so many years, 10, 15 years. And her husband Jeffrey gets credit because he's the hidden secret of this game, just like my wife Chris gets the credit.
He's the man behind the machine. I wouldn't be in front of you right now if it hadn't been for him.
I saw that subtle muting, and I went, "That's Jeffrey right there." I got that.
Oh yeah.
So it's good to have a good partner and a healthy partner. But
and I wanted to also say that we have some classes, Jeff and I, that are teaching coming up via Zoom that are coming up that we have right on our website if you want to sign up.
So Mark's Culinary is the place to go.
Yes.
And we'll see if we can collaborate with Jeff and Lizette to offer some of these kinds of programs and classes with us. Yeah,
absolutely.
We'll be back, and I just, tremendous thanks to Lizette and Jeff.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When we post them.
Bye.
And if you have questions about the future, please email me. My email's down below in the PDF. Okay. All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful.